going to handle it. I can say Kyle was so helpful at the time. He was living at home, taking some college courses, and I just remember anything that needed to be done, I'll go do it. I'll go do it. And I think he needed to keep himself busy. Um, and of course, with my husband, you worry about your marriage, what's going to happen here, how can we survive this, and how can we survive this well? Because, you want to go on and have a good life. You don't want to have a crappy life because this tragedy happened. And everybody grieves differently. I think at different times, maybe my husband or my son was a caretaker for me, or maybe at different times I was caretaker for my husband or Katie or Kyle. Again, I think you get through it with faith and family, and you just are so grateful for what you do have.
Right. Wow. Yeah, because the whole marriage piece, it's amazing how marriages will fall apart when there's a death of a child. And that's just another tragedy that comes from the tragedy. So when you are able to keep your marriage together and hopefully it got even stronger, what a beautiful blessing that Kayla is able to give then too, right?
Right. And, I felt this from the beginning. I feel like when this happens, what happens to your marriage, I feel like it accents the strengths in your marriage and it accents the weaknesses. Both just come out very, very bold. And in some ways, though, I would look at it and I would think, even if my husband was hurting or I was hurting, I just thought he's the one person on this earth who knows mostly what I'm going through.
Right.
That was a help.
Absolutely. Oh, man. So Kayla did something remarkable as a gift to others. Can you share that with us?
Yes, Kayla was a registered organ donor. So she donated 5 organs to 4 people, and she donated her both eyes and tissue as well, any tissue that they could use.
Wow. Isn't that just incredible? And I know that there are stories that we're going to talk about because hopefully you will be able to come back and be with me again for next week's episode, because I would like to talk about all of these things that happened with Kayla being an organ donor. There's so many beautiful stories that have come out of that. And also what you do with Compassionate Friends. Can you tell us a little bit about Compassionate Friends and how did you get introduced to it? So before, what you're doing with it right now, but how did you get introduced to Compassionate Friends and how did that help you?
Actually, Kayla had a classmate who died in a car accident a year and a half prior to Kayla, and that mother got a hold of me and came over one day and we talked, and she told me about Compassionate Friends and how helpful it was to her and her husband and her family. So we went probably 2 months after the accident, and I think just little tips and tidbits and things that the seasoned bereavers in those sessions told us were very, very helpful. And it also, I can remember though, going to my first meeting and everybody introducing themselves, and some people would say, 5 years ago I lost my son, or 10 years ago I lost my daughter. And I just thought, how does one survive for 10 years without their child? But I think it really gave me a good perspective on, the way people grieve is the right way to grieve, and don't let anybody tell you any different. So there was a lot of helpful things in those sessions, and just being in a room full of other people who really understood. Compassionate Friends is only for parents and grandparents and siblings who've lost a child. So it was good to know that other people understood what I was going through, and they were a big help to me.
Right, right, absolutely. And isn't that something that when you go to the first meeting and you're hearing about people like 5 years out and 10 years out, and how did you do that? 'Cause I had the same experience with my postman, and I still don't know, he's no longer the postman, I think he's retired, but I still don't know how he ever knew, but probably 2 or 3 weeks after Dara's passing, which I find it's just the similarities, right, of our girls, how we lost our girls, the ages, the time frame. It's just amazing. But he had said he understood what I was going through because he lost his daughter to breast cancer 3 years ago. And I remember thinking immediately, 3 years. Oh my God, in 3 years, I'm gonna have it all together. I'm gonna understand this. I'm gonna like my life will be okay again. And I just kept thinking, 3 years, 3 years. And it's amazing how we hang on to that. Like it was like somebody had thrown me the what do you call that? That little life circle thing to
Yeah,
hang that buoy to hang on to that if I can hang on for 3 years, and even though he wasn't, I mean, he said, he still grieves, and he was crying as he's telling me that. But to me, it was just like, I can do it then. If you could do it, I know that I can do it. And it's, oh man, it's
right.
just it's its own world, and nobody understands that world until you have been in that world. And I just admire you and the work that you have done because you've not done only just the work with Compassionate Friends, which we will get into more next week because we just don't have enough time now. We're going to start bringing this in for a landing. But you also do some work with Life Source, which is all about organ donations. And so I want to go a little bit deeper into that conversation. So as we're wrapping this up right now, Sue, could you share with the listeners how it is that they get in touch with Compassionate Friends? Because this is a nationwide program for bereaved parents, grandparents, and siblings. So I don't know if it's worldwide, I
It
assume it is, but for
it
surely the
is
United
yeah,
States.
it is international. It was actually started in the UK in the
Oh,
1960s.
wow.
It was started by a pastor who had two parishioners who'd lost a child, and he connected them together. And they sat at their kitchen table and felt that connection, and started the organization of Compassionate Friends.
Wow, I had no idea. That is fantastic. Okay,
Mhm.
so how would listeners be able to get in touch with Compassionate Friends if they need it for themselves or if they need to share it with a friend or a family member?
Yeah, they have a website. It's www.compassionatefriends.org. We happen to be in the South of the River chapter. We meet in a church in Apple Valley every third Tuesday of the month. Um, the website I mentioned has a lot of information for bereaved parents. And then they also have where you can drill down and get specific to our chapter and find out address and meeting times and location and all of that. The website really is chock full of good information for bereaved families.
Awesome. Awesome. And that information will be in the show notes. So if you weren't able to write that down, if you're driving or you didn't have a chance to write that down, it will be in the show notes. So you'll be able to have access to it. So people listening know that that information will be available for you. So Sue, I'm going to wrap this up by just telling you how grateful I am that you touched my heart when we first met. I feel like I know Kayla through you, and I think that's the most beautiful gift that we can give our children to allow them to live on by honoring them and carrying them forward. And if you can come back and join me for next week, I would love to have you because there's so much more I want to talk about Kayla and you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Nada.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being here with us today. And make sure you join us next week so you can hear the second part of the conversation that Sue and I have about coping with loss after losing a child. Bye bye for now.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please go to nadahogan.com for show notes and other information you can use right away. If you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to our show and don't forget to rate and review right there on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your shows. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week.